Gig Gab, episode 485 for Monday, June 9th, National Strawberry Rhubarb Pie Day 2025.
Awesome.
I think last time you were on, it was like National Apple Pie Day. But you told me you were a cherry pie fan.
Cherry pie guy.
If memory, yeah, so I think that's February. We can't do that.
And definitely not rhubarb pie.
No. Oh, interesting. Greetings, folks, and welcome to Gig Gab, the show by, for, and about working musicians. Our sponsors today are CashApp, where you can send somebody $5 and get $10, so that's a good thing. And the MLC.com, Mechanical Licensing Collective. They will take care of making sure you are getting paid your songwriting royalties and mechanical royalties for all the stuff you have on the streamers. We'll talk more about those in a little bit. For now, here in Durham, New Hampshire, I'm Dave Hamilton, and today's returning guest co-host is not just any guest. One of the most respected minds in live sound, even though he doesn't like strawberry rhubarb pie. You know him.
Can't go to the rhubarb. Can't go to the rhubarb.
You know him from his legendary work at front of house. You maybe have heard his legendary work at front of house with folks like Tom Petty, Rush, countless others. And now he is out doing something absolutely next level, mixing Kenny Chesney's show at Sphere in Las Vegas. We're going to dive into what that's like, what he's been doing at EAW since we last spoke, and maybe some gear, nerdy stuff, and maybe even some road stories. Robert Scovill, thank you so much for rejoining us
Dave?
Here on Gig Gab.
So great to be back, man. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. I love it. It's great. It's great. So let's get right into the Sphere thing.
Sure.
Because that's so you are as we're recording this, you are halfway through your run there. Or if my math is right, I think.
Yeah, I think we're just under halfway, but yeah, close.
Okay. And then by the time this comes out, you'll still have another week to go, I think, out there. But you've always been someone. We talked about this a year ago when you were on, but you've always, prior to that, even for decades, you've been somebody who is always into the science and the math and all of that stuff, with the goal of using all of that to make sure the audience experience is as great as it can be. And it was interesting. I was looking through kind of the notes from last time. One of the things that our listeners really caught onto was the thing that you talked about doing for Petty, where you set up essentially two PAs for him, at least as you described it, one for the big house and one for the first 8 rows or so. And we dug into a lot of that, and people loved that. And so many people have learned to time delay their mains with the snare drum, even in small rooms, and it makes such a difference for all of us. So thank you for that. And then one of the other things we talked about was very quickly, we glossed over this whole idea of Sphere. Now, I don't know if at that point in time you knew that this was in the works or not, and I get that.
I did not at that point.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I figured there's things you know about. There's things we all know about that we can't talk about in public, and that's fine. But I remember you saying, I gotta learn more about that place, and so now you have had the opportunity to do that, and it's almost like those two topics combined, but sort of in reverse, because what you're doing is having to undelay things, dealing with.
There is no undelay.
I understand. There's no negative delay, right?
No.
If there was, then bands could have amps on stage at the Sphere. So.
Well, there's some truth to that. Yeah. So, I mean, the interesting part of this, it's an interesting journey for me, right? Like, I mean, I'll set the table with this one. I had no idea that in the late 80s and early 90s, working for Rush was going to prepare me to do immersive country at some point in the future. I did not connect those dots, All
right, well, I'm going to tug on that thread, A, because it sounds interesting, and B, I'm a huge Rush fan, so obviously any story that involves Rush, I'm here for. So,
well, I mean, in the 80s and 90s, I mean, during my tenure with them, we were doing kind of surround sound. We had I'll call it quad because it was a 4-cluster array, and we had a panner set up, and the way I operated the panner in that show across the Gamble consoles is we did what's called a bus swap. meaning, like any inputs, all inputs eventually made their way to the main left-right PA system.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
But if you wanted to put something in the panner, you would deassign it from the left-right, assign it to the panner, and now you could sweep it through left-right and the rear speakers. Right.
That makes sense. Okay. I got you. Sure. Yeah.
So, obviously in that day it was all analog, so I had somebody who was literally loading panner cues for me. They would deassign something for a given song, assign it up to the panner, and then I just had control of the joystick and could move it anywhere I wanted to move it.
And were you doing that live, like during the show? Oh, interesting.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That was all scripted live moves.
Yeah, right.
On the console. Sure.
Wow. Yeah, I guess automation wasn't quite where it is today.
It was not there yet. At that point we were still all analog consoles.
Yeah.
So, the thing that's been amazing to me, not to jump too far ahead here, is that I'm using Meyer Galaxies and Spacemap Go for anything that I want to move spatially in the sphere, whether I want to actually have it moving or I want to position something and maybe leave it static for a little bit before it moves. I'm using their panner mechanism, but I was just shocked that it's exactly the same workflow. Like you deassign it from the main buses, assign it to the panner, and put it where you want in the building. You know what I mean? So I just remember thinking, wow, this is just like a really exaggerated version of what I was doing in 1989 in terms of the panning here.
Wow. So you didn't have to be the one to build it though.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
But obviously we got a lot more facility, with the way I'm doing that in Sphere, a lot more capability.
Yeah.
I mean, we got 32 channel output panner there, and I can instigate on Spacemap Go. They're called trajectories, right? So you can literally on an iPad write a trajectory. You can literally take your finger and go, I want it to do this. Beep. And then however you when you send audio to that particular input, it will send it out, those outputs, creating that trajectory.
The right ones, but that's a computer sort of deciding what you get to vote as to where it goes, and it actually decides where it goes.
It actually just facilitates getting it there. Yeah.
Facilitates getting it there. Yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So, just depending, like in my situation with SXL, I work on Avid's SXL.
Yep.
And you have the capability on there to have set a meter threshold. Like you could say, okay, as soon as the meter hits minus 40, send out a MIDI command. My MIDI command goes to Spacemap Go and it starts the trajectory. So it does it automatically for you. I don't have to manually do it. So like if I have a noise move or, a voice that's going to move through space, as soon as that input hits a specific level, it'll send the command to start the trajectory and off we go.
It knows you're at the right spot in the song because that person stopped singing or whatever, and now it's time to go.
I usually don't do a live, well, I shouldn't say that. I do some delay effects from a live vocal that are up in different parts of the room.
That's cool.
But most of, any like ethereal voices and stuff, our backing vocals, sometimes I'll push up into a different part of the building. But
that's cool.
So my point of bringing all that up was, who knew that I was going to be, working for Rush was going to prepare me for doing country at the Sphere.
Well, I mean, as I understand it, those guys, that band, that the whole production you were involved in at that point was always sort of pushing things forward at a leading point of the industry, not perhaps but not the only one, but yeah.
I'm still surprised at how many, when you first think of it, you just think, well, what are we going to do in there with country music? But there in Kenny's music, which is not, he can be traditional country as traditional country can be.
Sure.
But he also pushes the envelope on that a lot of times, he's with a lot of artists. They do a lot of different music style productions. And there's actually a lot of opportunity to showcase it in his show. It's very interesting,
That's good. That's great.
So, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to do it. It's been a lot of work. I've spent, I don't know how long now, I've been writing articles on immersive sound and spatialization and all of these things for a long time. And I've said this many times in some of these articles and even when speaking to people, I can't wait to get out and try it at scale.
Yeah.
Like we can all do it in our Atmos studios and all kinds of things, but doing it with live music at a large scale, whole different animal here, folks. I mean, it's a whole different game, so
Well, I would think that at least part of that game is you don't get the opportunity to redo something. And of course you do, because you're doing multiple nights, but for that audience on that night, you don't get a chance to make it right for them if you made it wrong for them. So it's not like being in the studio where it's in a mixing booth where it's potentially just you, but certainly not the intended audience. You can play with it, you can get it right, and then bounce it and ship it. In this, you had to do it during rehearsals and essentially dial it in so you're not going too far off the map live.
Yeah, with this, and for those that don't know here, you and I talked about it. Sphere has put together a simulator.
Well, that's right. It's great. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, because how did you prepare for this was where I wanted to go for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, initially, when like our rehearsal schedule even is, this is such a unique thing. We just work in a very unique way to get ready for this. We started rehearsals, music rehearsals, audio style rehearsals in January of this year. And, the plan was for us to rehearse about a week, maybe 10 days out of every month in the lead up to Sphere.
Okay.
And, it really was for as much as anything, get everybody's vocals in shape, get everybody kind of mentally in the game, etc. And it gave me a great opportunity because I could have my console there and set up how I was going to do it. And the oralizer from that we use at Sphere is actually a standalone product. Like you can just use it as a standalone, take 64 inputs into it. It'll fold it down to stereo. So really, when we were in rehearsals, that's what I was listening on. I was just
and were you listening? Were you when you were doing these rehearsals? Were you listening on you had posted a picture on Facebook of this Sphere simulator, which was just you kind of in a battery of speakers surrounding you.
Actually, I might be able to pull up a picture of it here. We'll see.
Sure.
But I was going to say these rehearsals pre that though were just at Soundcheck in Nashville.
Normal rehearsal.
Yeah, so I've just had a stereo setup.
Got it.
And the idea was to build your show file and have some sense of it, mixing in stereo. And then once we get to Vegas, which we landed in Vegas about 3 weeks previous to our entry to Sphere.
Okay.
We were at a location here where they built out the stage we were actually going to use in the building. Huh. We obviously we couldn't do anything video wise. We had to just put up very flattened video of what was going to happen just to check cues and all kinds of things.
They didn't build two spheres.
No, not that they wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put them past them.
I'm sure there's another one coming someday. Yeah, that's my speculation, not yours.
I would count on that.
Yeah.
But in that building, they also set up a simulated version of that. We were using all Meyer product. I think it was, I can't remember the actual model number of the speaker. But set up to emulate Sphere, and they kind of do it very accurately. Like they set it up in terms of like gain is gain. Whatever level you're mixing at here, that's what level is going to come out at Sphere. They kind of simulate the propagation in there, so it's a pretty accurate representation. No exaggeration. I probably got probably 90% of the way to where the show was going to be in there.
Wow.
There's some realities once you get in the building, but I can't, I'll say this. I'm so thankful they have done that, because I cannot imagine walking into there and then just having to experience that fresh and pull it together, man. It's the most intense build I've ever put together for a show.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah. Well, and how smart of them to do that, because Sphere obviously is a new venue. A new kind of venue. It's not just brand new in terms of the build, but no one's ever done anything quite like this before, not to this scale, right? And so if they didn't give you, well, maybe a better way to say it, by giving you and anybody else that comes through there the opportunity to really learn how to do it without having only 48 hours of time or something before the show. That's good marketing for them, because people.
It's in their best interest to do it for sure.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
I'll talk glowingly about the Holoplot guys. These guys are very, very sharp guys, and the tools that they're giving you to do this are way ahead of the game. They're very far ahead of the game here.
That's so cool.
To do this. So, long story short to say, we spent time, or I spent, weeks of time building and rebuilding this show file. Cause, this is the part that kind of gets lost sometimes when we're talking about doing, immersive for live sound, compared to Atmos in the studio, et cetera, is that consoles, we're talking about having to change over to object mixing as well as the immersive piece of it. Right. So, like there is no, in immersive, there really is no mix bus, right? It's all just a series of objects and beds that you're going to deliver to the immersive. So for a live sound console, that presents all kinds of challenges, none the least of which is how do I monitor it? Like, if I want to build offline, how do I monitor it? So, when I solo something, what does it mean?
What does that mean?
Does solo in place mean anything here? So
I'm reminded of the first time I learned how Atmos works because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, Atmos is more about the metadata that it sends along to your speaker system in your living room or a movie theater or whatever, where it doesn't say, put this in the left speaker, put this in the center speaker, put this in the up speaker. It says, put this sound over here. You, the system, decides how to translate that in this environment. And is that similar to what's happening at Sphere?
No, not really, because in that Atmos world, remember, they have some other challenges and metrics in play like that, right? Like when you mix in post for a movie,
right,
you have no idea what system that is going to run into when it plays out.
Exactly. Right.
So a lot of that metadata is just literally geometry to say, okay, well, if it's in a room this size, this is where that's going to show up. If it's in a room this size, this is where it's going to show up. We really don't have to worry about any of that here.
Oh, because it's
all real time. Everybody's in the same room, right?
Right.
So it's just a matter of placing it. But that said, how you get that from the console to the space is a challenge. Like we can go pretty far deep into this. But like I was showing somebody my output drive on the console the other day, and it's 64 groups up into 64 matrices.
Oh man!
And 64, networked outputs to their equipment. So just assigning something somewhere is like, I'm normally it's like, well, we either got left or right. I'll assign it to left, right, but
or maybe both.
I'm looking at the oralizer. What do you got? 46, 48 choices here. Of where
I'll
you're going to put
for those of you watching the video, I'll put the oralizer up on the screen here that just kind of shows it. But it essentially what we're looking at is a representation on a computer, but this is the app that you would use to define all this stuff that shows all the different I guess speaker points or positions that you could listen from. Got it. Okay. Yeah. And it's shaped in a circle-ish kind of thing.
Circle. It's absolutely a circle. Yeah. It's a globe, So, just to get everybody up to speed here. So any one of these circles represents a speaker cluster, right?
Got it.
So you can see, and the thing, like the secret sauce of Holoplot is that they can do very accurate coverage from any given speaker source, a very, very precise. So they can make it where it's like, okay, this one array, everybody can hear that array. This array, everybody can hear that array. This array over here, everybody can hear that array. And that's kind of the idea behind this is that, you don't have anything localized array wise here, right? Everybody can hear all of it.
Oh, unlike an array that you might set up in like a stadium, for example, where parts of it are aimed only at one section. This is everybody gets to hear everything.
This is why this is such a I'll call it revolutionary thing. It's just so different than what we have. I mean, you can boil it down from the system engineering point of view. You can boil it down to a couple of ideas, right?
Sure.
In traditional system engineering for stereo left and right, and even where we have multiple arrays, what we are trying to create there is arrays that do not overlap, right? We don't want interaction in those arrays unless they're in phase.
Because then you start to get comb filtering and that's bad.
So, you have, that's been the whole game for many, many, many years. Don Davis really brought this to the fore of having accurate coverage and not overlapping coverage. And if you do have overlapping coverage, you usually have to deal with it in time, right? But that is also all based on mixing convex, there, right? Where the PA is shaped the opposite of this, right? Where we have something that is centered and moving away from us in a traditional PA. Think about how you see a PA in an arena.
Yes,
it is convex. It is not concave, right? So if you have, like if I put something on the left side and I put something on the right side, there's no penalty to the other side, right? If I have something on the left side and I have something on the right side, here, I'll get my hands where you can see them here. If I have something on the left and the right side, well, the right side is going this way. The left side is going this way.
The right side's going right. The left side's going left. They're not impacting each other.
In concave, it's the opposite now, right? Something on the left is reading all the way over here. Something on the right is reading all the way over here. There's massive overlap in it, and you need that, right?
That's the whole point.
To have overlap everywhere. So it throws system engineering kind of up on its head.
Oh yeah.
So you have to think completely. And I've kind of stated this, in some early articles that I did on Immersive, is that is going to be one of the things that changes the whole game here, is that we're going to have to design speaker systems now that have the capability to be incredibly wide in terms of their coverage, tons of overlap to be able to fulfill this kind of criteria of mixing and concave,
It's fascinating. Makes my brain hurt in the most delightful way. I love this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that comes with it, and it's kind of why I always say, I wanted to get out and do this at scale and kind of see where it breaks, so to speak, is if we're in, a relatively close confines of an Atmos studio, even a movie theater, right? The difference in arrival time to the listener between any one speaker is not all that great. It's definitely different. No question. You're going to be closer to one wall than the other. There's going to be an arrival time difference. But here, you're talking about arrival time differences 200, 250 milliseconds.
Oh, that's not acceptable if you haven't accounted for it. That'd be a disaster.
Right. I can make the band sound completely like the worst band you've ever heard in the world if you're not careful,
Right.
Those guys couldn't play in time to save their lives.
I was going to say,
that's my fault, actually.
Let's be fair. You've always had that ability. Thankfully, you've never leveraged it for evil.
That's right. Not that I haven't been tempted.
No, I didn't say you had. but like here, it's amplified for sure.
Oh, for sure. It's magnified for sure.
Magnified, perhaps. Yeah. Yeah. Very
matter of fact, if you pull the oralizer back up there, I'll give an example of it.
Okay.
So in object mixing as well, and this is so hard for people to want to grasp. It was hard for me to kind of grasp it and hold on to it. In this world, stereo means nothing. Like you have to just disband stereo and just say that doesn't exist here.
Right.
Because I'll give you an example. All right. I'll give you an example. So if like in the center of the room where I'm positioned right here, this is mixed position, by the way. You can make.
Okay, so if you're looking at the screen, there's this circle of things and a dot effectively in the middle. That's the mixed position.
This is mixed position, right?
Yeah.
And these are kind of the main portions of it. So sitting here, like I can take guitars and put them out here, and it sounds flipping glorious. Absolutely glorious. You just think, God, this sounds incredible. Until you go over here and listen.
If you would, for the people watching on YouTube, I for some reason I can't see your mouse anymore, and I don't know why. Maybe click out of the window and come back in, and then maybe you're there. It is. I got you
over here. Sorry. Yes, I see it now.
Oh, you were clicking. I know what you. I know.
Yeah,
where
I was
clicking.
on the.
You were on our watch screen. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Anyway, so what I was saying was, I'll just repeat it here. So I was saying, if you were to put guitars left and right, like a stereo guitar,
like where left and right might be in a normal room. Yep.
Well, from about here to here, it sounds absolutely stunning. I mean, you just think, oh my God, this is the coolest guitar sound I'm ever going to hear in my life here. Until you get over here and listen from this position.
So he's describing, just so that sort of the front triangle would sound great, but anything outside of that starts to not sound great.
Yeah, and here's why, right? Because I would hear the guitar, the initial arrival of the guitar here, and then I'm literally 200 milliseconds, maybe that much. I'm going to hear another guitar the right half of that stereo.
Yeah.
Would
So
show up here.
if you're on the far left of the room, you'll hear the sound from the left speaker first, and then a quarter second later, the sound from the right speaker. That's a very different guitar effect pedal than
That's the wrong
perhaps the
effects
guy on
pedal
stage
right there.
intended.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, you have to be very disciplined with it. And honestly, you have to kind of get rid of stereo. And, I'll kind of show off this aspect of the oralizer here before I talk about this. So when in rehearsals, for example, when I'm listening just on the standalone oralizer, even in Nashville, like it accounts for this. Like the fold down into stereo accounts for this. So, if I were to do this, I were to set up the guitars, I actually have the ability with the oralizer to go over to this position and listen from here.
What it would in theory sound like over there. Got it.
What it would
Okay.
in fact sound like over there.
Yeah,
not even
fair,
in theory.
fair. Yeah.
Or I can go to the back of the building and see what it feels like back here. And now I'm still listening here, but it's giving me a representation
It's
of what
changing the sound coming out of the speakers so that you're getting the net effect. Yeah.
So, you can get a sense of what is actually happening there.
That's
It's a
pretty
very
cool.
powerful tool. And like I said, especially once I got to the oralizer and started really messing with this a little bit, it was amazing how accurate and how effective it was. So to circle back to the stereo thing, you just have to disband it. I can't imagine what you were doing there, what you would be doing there if you had piano spread out that far, left hand, right hand.
Oh yeah.
It's just,
Don't do that.
it just doesn't work.
You really need to rethink how you do everything, even each individual instrument, like a drum set, overhead,
100%.
pan left and right. Well, maybe not.
Well, and it's, the cool part about it is that, a part of this is just learning how to mix in objects, and mix with this idea, because ultimately it's kind of localized, right? You're really, really delivering a lot of mono sources here for the most part.
A series of mono sources that each might come from different places.
Correct.
Yes.
So,
but that's thinking of it from a listener standpoint, and this is going to be hard. It's hard for me to believe. I still haven't I haven't gone out to the Sphere to see a concert. I watched the Aronofsky movie there, but I haven't seen a show. But I would imagine when mixed well, that might allow an audience member to hear the separation between instruments far more easily than you would if it's just all coming out of left and right. Even if it's panned well and all of that, it's all still coming from a narrow field. Whereas if you widen that field, that would be my guess.
You're 100% spot on. Like that is the gold that comes from this. Like your ability to create separation now and clarity in the mix. I don't call it easy, but it's easy compared to stereo.
Oh, compared to what you've got to do, especially if you're in a building with a roof. Where you've got all the reflections.
Just anywhere. I don't care whether it's in the studio, a well-tuned studio, or what.
That's fair.
This idea of being able to create separation and clarity on instrumentations is so much easier in objects. Now you're sacrificing a little bit of impulse for that.
Sure.
Because those, depending on where you are in the room, those instruments are going to arrive at different times, right? Oh. Whereas if we're in stereo, all instruments are leaving the speaker system at the same time, and they're arriving to you at the same time, regardless of where you sit.
Right.
But that's both the blessing and the curse.
Yes. Right. Oh, that's interesting. So you might have, hopefully you wouldn't, but it would be fairly easy to create a scenario even once you accept, okay, I'm mixing. Each instrument is a mono instrument, and I get to put them in different places. If we go back to your example where the person sitting on the left side of the house, if you've got guitar on the left and bass on the right, those two instruments aren't going to arrive at the same time.
They are for a period of the room, but not
for some of it, but not for the person all the way on the left.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Yeah, exactly.
So again, you just have to be really disciplined with it.
Yeah.
Now the thing that comes with this,
I imagine there was a lot of mistakes in the.
Believe me, and I'm still making them. I'm still making them.
Yeah.
I'm still getting it together on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I certainly cleared out a lot of the mistakes I made early on with it.
Yeah.
Got what I was
You said
going to say here.
the discipline that was going to come from this.
Yeah. Well, the interesting part of it is like you don't get as wide as you think you normally get, but you can still do wide things with it that can be very effective. You just have to be very disciplined to the music, right? If it was, the thing that trips this up is that it's music, right?
Yes, right.
It's not sound effects. It's not like even, mixing our opening trailer, that we run for the intro of the show. I mean, it was like mixing for a movie trailer. I mean, we were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And you could be way more liberal with that than you would with an actual piece of performed music. You have to be way more disciplined there. But that said, you can spread things out. Like this gives you the ability to place reverbs in different places if you want to do it.
Oh,
it's one of those things where I was actually really surprised by this too. I'm still working on, like, it's kind of a last frontier for us in live sound, and how we're going to deal with having ambient spaces and reverberant spaces in a music environment, in this kind of environment. But I was really surprised how well mono reverb worked in this scenario. Like where you're just taking an instrument, if you're going to put a room on it, you're going to put a plate on it, whatever, just do it in mono and sit it right in there with it. And it gives it a depth that absolutely works. Now, if you want to spread it out, you can take the reverb pieces of it. Like I do this with a couple of stereo reverbs on things where I put it kind of asymmetrical in different parts of the room. And that seems to work pretty well as well. I was actually surprised how well that worked.
Did that work as well? Did what you learned about that in the Sphere simulator, I'll call it, in rehearsals, translate the same once it was in the room with that much space? Okay, all right, that's that. Yeah, okay, another testament to their build of that simulator. Yeah,
very much so. But it also revealed, though, is that, and again, I'm going to narrow this down to music production. Like a lot of the spatializers that are available on the market now offer a reverb algorithm for the entire mix, right? I mean, you don't really have. You're just gonna make the space you're in feel bigger or smaller, right? Right. But I don't think this is lost on anybody, especially in this crowd. For music mixing, we don't use one room for everything.
No.
I mean, I might have a different room for my snare drum. I might have a different plate for my snare drum than I do for my kick and my toms. I certainly have a different room for those things than I would my guitars.
Yes.
Same for keys, etc. So, kind of the glaring omission in our world right now in live sound for immersive is having reverb processors that can actually do that, right? Because we want to be able to spatialize that reverb, but I can't just do it in stereo. I've got to have multi-output.
It's got to be in instead of 2 channels, it's got to be in 64 channels.
Well, 64 ideally, but you could even get away with creating it almost like a bed, where you're going to.
I see. Yeah.
I'm going to make a snare drum bed that's got my space around it. Maybe it's 5.1, maybe it's 7.1, whatever. Oh. But again, it becomes this challenge because we don't have 5.1 or 7.1 busing on the console. So how are we going to do that? Even if I had the reverb that could do it, how am I going to do that? So you
brought, and you said this before, but it did not land, at least not for me. I'm a little slow. Until now, you brought your preferred console in, the SXL. There isn't a, when you are mixing at Sphere, thou shalt use this custom console that is built for Sphere. You come in, you plug your comfort zone into their crazy zone, and then it's on you. But now you're using a tool that was not designed for anything even remotely this.
I mean, it's, there are no live sound consoles out there right now.
That's what I mean.
That are designed with object mixing.
It's no one's fault. Right. Yeah. No, but someone will, eventually, I would think.
Well, if this continues to take hold.
If this kind of thing, yeah.
Will. I mean, I've been talking to other, like reverb manufacturers about it, kind of some stopgap measures for us to do this, And, one would be, inside the processor itself is you have the multi-channel busing inside the console, inside the processor, So if I'm taking an auxiliary or just a simple object that I want to get, reverbed in the space, I would take it in as a single input, and then it would hit their 5.1 bus. You would position it, and then the reverberant space would happen as a result of that. Right. Take the 5 outputs, the 6 outputs, 7 outputs of reverb, whatever it is, bring it back to your console and send it out. Now, it doesn't take a leap of mental acuity here to start to figure out what this actually requires is consoles that have lots and lots of inputs and output busing capability.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I'll say this. Avid just released a new engine here not long ago. And I'll say I don't know that I could have done this show in there without that new engine, because it had greatly expanded busing. additional input counts, et cetera. And I mean, I am pushing it right to the limit on a country show.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Right.
yeah, that's fair. Right. That's right. Yeah. You're not actually doing Rush for something like this where you might
Yeah.
I don't want to make your brain hurt, but like that would potentially offer even more stuff to do. Although my guess it could. Yeah. This is interesting. So in the computer nerd world, years and years ago, there was a thing developed, decades ago, there was a thing developed called object-oriented programming. Now you're doing object-oriented mixing.
Yeah,
and while the
that's
two are
correct.
different, they both require I remember when I had to shift as a programmer from what I'll call linear coding to object-oriented coding. And it took a really long time for my brain to adapt to that because I wasn't 16 years old anymore learning things,
Well, it's going to take our brains time to adapt to it for sure.
And
But
then
it's definitely going to take the manufacturer's time to adapt to it mechanically and architecturally,
Amazing.
So we're kind of in a halfway point right now.
This is great. This is amazing. All right. I have a million more things I want to ask you about, including what this means for the performers on stage, because I know that's got to change some things for them. The next thing that I want to do is tell all of you about our great sponsor. Because, all right, you ever get done with a killer set, you high-five your bandmates, and then realize, somebody needs to settle up with the sound guy, the drummer, and the burrito joint. That's why I like to use our sponsor, Cash App. It's fast, it's safe, and it lets me send or receive money in seconds. Signing up took me less time than tuning my snare drum and way less yelling. What I love most? It feels smart. If something sketchy's happening, Cash App gives you a heads up before you hit send. It's like your roadie who says, hey, maybe don't plug into that amp. And the flare? Well, yeah, you can customize your payments with emojis and stamps and backgrounds. I once paid a bass player with a rainbow sparkle dancing taco just to see if he'd notice. He did. He respected it. So here's the deal. Download Cash App, enter code GIGGAB in your profile, then send $5 to a friend within the first 14 days, and Cash App will give you $10. That's it. Real money, real fast. That's code GIGGAB in Cash App. Send $5, get $10. I know, you're sending less than you're getting. It's a good thing. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. And that's how you always be performing on stage and at settlement time. Now let's talk about something every working songwriter needs to care about. Getting paid. I mean, really paid. If you're a songwriter, music publisher, or administrator, you need to know about the MLC. That's the Mechanical Licensing Collective. They're the folks making sure you get your mechanical royalties from streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music here in the US. Every month, the MLC gathers streaming data, figures out what you're owed, and get this, they actually pay you. I know, it sounds like music industry fantasy land, but it's real. They've already distributed over $3 billion to more than 55,000 members. That's not pocket change, right? That's tour van upgrade money, or at least a few new snare heads and some decent tacos, right? The best part, membership is 100% free. If your music is streaming and you haven't signed up yet, there's probably money sitting in a digital couch cushion waiting for you. So do yourself a favor. Don't leave it behind. Head to themlc.com and sign up today. Because if you're writing songs, releasing music, and always performing, then you should always be getting paid too, right? So visit themlc.com today to sign up. And my thanks to the MLC and to Cash App for sponsoring this episode. All right. So, Robert, for the musicians on stage, we talked about this a little bit last time. I think Phish was just about to play Sphere, or maybe had just played Sphere.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how they couldn't have, it was different for them because they couldn't have amps on stage. The drums needed to be in a fishbowl. They all had to be on in-ears. And that was a change for that band. What's it been like? I'm assuming all of that is also true for this band, although I think this band was much closer to that. The drums aren't usually in a fishbowl when you're mixing in a stadium, but I think everybody else was kind of going direct anyway and on ears. What other adaptations and And what was the net effect of that as you started going through rehearsals on the musicians?
Well, I mean, our secret weapon, unquestionably, is that the entire band has been on ears for many years.
Sure.
Right? So,
as an aside, if I might interrupt, I think that's a secret weapon for every band, no matter what size you are. Get yourselves on ears and it will open up so much of the world. Everybody's sick of me saying this for the last 10 years. So I'm just saying it again. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
But, I mean, the real, the real practical challenge here at Sphere is that you have a PA system that is sitting well behind the band. The entire band, not just somebody, a singer who is out of the PA, an entire band. So when you really
kind
start
of like
processing,
Owsley's Wall of Sound,
kind of, in many respects. Well, I mean, the similarities are actually there.
Yeah.
But the problem is, is one of delay again, right? I mean, where, even though Holoplot can be very, very accurate in where it is sending audio and
Holoplot being the app that is the interface between the sounds you are making and the speakers. Speaker system.
Holoplot is the audio manufacturer for them.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
But still, you have people that are very far in front of the PA. I'm talking, enough to, like if you think about people who tried to sing at stadiums, the national anthem with no monitors, they speak and then they hear it and the whole thing just tumbles out of control. That could be very, very possible here because the instrumentation is going to arrive to the audience before the PA system. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right?
Oh, they're closer. Of course.
Yeah.
You're in front of the speakers,
and
right?
It's not like in a club or a theater where it's, okay, that's kind of close. All right, we can kind of deal with that. And, in that situation, the PA is always in front of the band. So you can make some adjustments for it to make it work.
Like we talked about last time, you delay what's coming out of the mains to match what's coming off the back line, and you're in better shape. You don't get to delay what's coming off of the snare drum to match what's coming out of the speaker.
The snare is always early, always early. So I always think back to this story. Here, I'll give you a Rush story.
Okay.
So on my first tour with Rush, when we had set up, we had the speaker systems that we hung in the corners of the back corners of the arena.
Yep, I remember.
It was a little 360-degree array that we put back there, and we called it the A.S.S, right?
Okay.
It's the alternate speaker system. That's what we call the A.S.S, right?
That's why you called it the A.S.S. That's right. Yeah, that's why, folks. Yeah.
So, I had grand plans for it. Like I had all this stuff I was going to be doing with it, and none the least of which one of them was Neil's solo. Like I thought, oh man, we're going to have some fun with this.
I remember. Yeah.
So the first rehearsals that we did with it, I had some stuff scooted back there ready to go, and Neil hits the first tom-tom. And then, probably easily 200 milliseconds later, he heard it come back to him. And he was like, bong, bong. I could see the look in his face thinking, either this is going to go really good or this is going to go really bad. I thought, okay, he's going to put the kibosh on this whole thing. And he kind of gets on the overhead mics. He's trying to talk to me. He goes, "Hey, that's coming back really late. Can you put some delay or something on that?" And I was like, okay, how am I going to tell him? It's like, well, it's already late. I don't think we want to make it later, do we?
It's a very strange anecdote, but similar thing happened. My parents had twins after me and did not know they were having twins until the day they had twins. And they had a boy and a girl. And my dad asked the doctor, so are they identical or fraternal? And the doctor stopped him and said, listen, I understand this is new for you. You didn't know anything. I'm going to let you kind of take that back and choose whether you want to ask that question again or not. He says, I'll give you some extra information that I know you already have. They are a boy and a girl. Let me know if you want to know anything else. So, yeah, sounds similar kind of thing.
Like, similar.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the punchline on the story. So, and this honestly speaks to how great Neil was to work with. So we kind of went through our little back and forth on that, and I saw him kind of the light bulb kind of came on and said,
sure.
Yeah, okay, this is not going to change. So he altered the solo, and he did this on a nightly basis. depending on the propagation time from the
What?
delays. Yes. If you guys remember this solo, think back to this
well,
now.
as you started telling this story, I was like, I definitely remember the solo moving around the room, so that he didn't put the kibosh on it. Yeah.
No, he most certainly did not. So if you remember the solo, the beginning of it is a double tom hit. It would be like,
yes,
"Doo-dum."
gong gong. Yeah.
And then he would hear it come back, and now he knew the tempo of the room.
That's
Right.
why he did that.
Yeah. So he would just, depending on how far those were, because it changed every night.
Yes, of
depending on
course.
arena size, he would just come out and check that, and then jump right into it. It was just amazing to watch it.
Oh yeah, that's on at least one of the live records. Maybe a show of hands. I want to say
Probably, yeah, certainly on. What was the one after that? The one I recorded and did. It was certainly on that.
That's right. A show of hands did not have the quad.
I don't
sound.
think it did. Yeah,
because that was the Hold Your
it-
Fire tour. That was pre you. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I definitely remember that in the solo. What an interesting hack.
So honestly, that was a great school for what you could get away with in surround and what you can't get away with in surround in music.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and it wouldn't have been
anything
an
that
issue if he was on ears.
Well, it might not have been.
That's fair. He would still would have heard it in the overheads.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, honestly,
fair.
I think it might have been worse if he was on ears in that situation.
That's fair.
Because he wouldn't have been playing to the tempo of the room, right? So,
that's true. It would have just been
it would
cacophony.
might have been chaos,
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah. You definitely want him to be able to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's it. Like I said, it was a great school to kind of prepare me for this, because what you learned very quickly in the Rush thing was that if there were things that were rhythmic in nature, you had to be really careful putting that anywhere other than in the left-right mix. Because you could throw off the time signature of the song for all intents and purposes, depending
For
on
the
where you're
audience, at the
sitting in
very
room.
least.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So things we noticed, that things like anything that was pad based, like pads, even guitar diamonds, things like that, could work really, really good in space. You could. The interesting part about arpeggios, like if we had keyboard arpeggios and stuff that we wanted to move around, there was a speed that they would work, but if you parked them, they wouldn't work. They were just completely out of time with the music. But if you kept them moving, and you kept them moving at a specific speed, it would work for the audience. So
that's interesting.
It was like I said, it was just a whole different way of thinking about what you're going to do with audio, and it prepared me really well for what I run into here. So,
Has like you said, the band with Chesney is all on ears, and the drums are now in a fishbowl to keep the snare drum from impact. Like, does that do it? Like, is that
it's a
enough?
combination of things. The guys at Sphere have told me that our show has had the best result of anybody that's come in to do that, and I think it's a function of two things. I think it's a function of our drums being slightly farther upstage and slightly farther off stage. Like we have a split, like drums are not in the center of the room, they're off to the side.
Right.
Now that said, that brings up a whole nother interesting possibility for object mixing and something like Sphere. And I've tested this and I was just mesmerized at how good this worked. So I had the thought of, okay, well, one of the secrets of being in immersive like this, or being in this kind of environment, is that you can, you don't have to worry about, well, the PA is too small over there to handle the drum kit. I mean, I can put it anywhere in the room and it'll sound like the drum kit, for the most part.
Sure. Yeah.
So I started thinking, well, I wonder if it would actually help them in ears if I took the drums out of the center of the room, which they are right now. I've ended up going back to that, and put them over right behind the drum kit.
Yeah.
So that even on
Truly
stage,
like the wall of sound.
Yeah, truly. So like it would localize there, right?
Yeah.
And it would localize even there for the audience. Like if you're looking there, you're going to hear the drums coming from there,
Yeah.
So I set up some presets on the console to test it. And I did kind of the same thing with the bass player. And I mean, this is the part where it really kind of boggled my mind a little bit, is how directional and localized you could be with the bass guitar.
What?
Like I can move,
because that's normally.
I know.
Okay.
Right? I know where you're going there. And I was like, okay, I have to just see if this is going to work here.
Sure.
So, the bass player's on the other side of the stage. Her station is on the other side of the stage, even though she's all over the place.
Yeah.
Her and the keys, the organ, the other stuff is sitting over there. So I said, okay, I'm going to make a preset where I just split these things out and put them localized to their stations and see how it reads in the room. Man, for the people down close and for the people 100 section, even 200 section, it was positively amazing. I was like, wow, that just totally works there.
And then you got to the 300s.
Yeah. The people
Sure.
up top. So I don't know that I'm totally settled on it yet. You know, I kind of got the shows up and going. We're about 6 shows in, but I may readdress this at some point when I get really comfortable with this and split those two things apart. Because here's the thing that came from it sonically, and I've noted, and this has kind of been across the board with all of this, is as soon as I split those out, the bass drum sounded better, bass guitar sounded better. Those two things did not collide harmonically. And like you could just read what they were doing just so clearly, you know, like the intelligibility of the bass went up as soon as I split it away from the drum kit.
Makes perfect sense.
It was amazing. It was amazing.
I mean, that is also true when EQ wise, you separate the kick from the bass guitar, you know, that same a level of clarity comes up when you do that. More so, I would imagine, when you can literally, our brains are really, they're engineered to tell exactly where the lion that we heard is coming from, right?
Right.
And so when you start, like, we're really good at being able to separate things.
Yeah, and our eyes, this is a theory that I have that I'm sure some scientist somewhere could back this up, but my gut instinct tells me this is true. That even if in Immersive, if we create some of these timing offsets, you know, in the room, our eyes fix that for us because we're watching someone play it.
I bet that's true.
If we're just listening, we kind of go, oh, okay, but hang on, is that out of time? But now that we watch it and we can see those people over there and we can see those people over there and we hear them coming from there, our brain fixes that. That's my theory on it. I have nothing to
bet
back
you're
it up
right.
other than gut, but I've experienced it.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask, because it turns out you have the ability to test this theory by closing your eyes. Like, yeah.
Well, here's where it comes to bear, is like when you're in virtual sound check, because you're in audio only.
Right.
And you get kind of a perception that's going on. And then as soon as that 40-foot tall iMag comes on and the band is on stage, the mix sounds different. It sounds different. I haven't done a thing on the console. You perceive the mix differently.
When there's a huge screen going on and all that
Well,
stuff.
just when you see the players with it.
Oh, even just seeing the play. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yep.
I've experienced that multiple times in my career. It really gets driven home in this environment, for sure.
Yeah. Interesting. No, Well, I'm curious to hear how that evolves for you. I mean, I'm thinking in moments where the band members are being shown on the screen, you might even want to move the sound up to where people are seeing their big images on the screen.
I considered doing that. I actually do that a little bit with the solos. Like
that makes sense.
Like my guitar
sure.
solos are separate from my rhythm solos, and I have the ability on the console to place them anywhere I want to place them.
Yeah.
So I have the ability to do that for sure. Now there's a couple times where the drummer is on the ceiling.
Yeah.
You know, up in top, and I've considered doing it, but you know, it can get a little and it's going to sound weird to kind of say it this way, but there are places in the building, like there is a balcony, so there are people under the balcony who can't see the top, etc. And there is a fold down that takes place down there of audio for anything that you have spatialized up in the building.
So for the people that are on the
zone.
Floor under the 100 section of seats that can't see the top. Got it.
So that
okay.
I don't know that I don't know how that would turn out. I would certainly do some testing with that.
Of course.
I would try that to see what is happening in that fold down there.
Well, I mean, if they were to see the drums moving up and then they moved out of view, who knows? Like maybe that would make sense to their brains. I don't know.
I know Gary with Phish. I mean, he'll swing the whole band around the room. He'll
I've
take
heard
them all
that.
the way around.
now, I heard that from people complaining about that. So, but people change. We are humans, so therefore we are by nature change-resistant creatures, right?
Yeah, we are. And I applaud Gary for trying it. It's like, go for it, man. Let's see how it comes out here.
Oh, I think, I mean, I think it, like, being able to have a playground like that to experiment with. I mean, look, I understand that what everybody's doing, you, the band members, everybody else in the crew, it's all very important. But no, other than the people who are actually making sure people stay safe, nobody's saving lives here. Right. It's music, right? You can have fun with this.
It is, but at the same time, I take this just so seriously. Like, that audience has to have a musical experience.
Fair.
They have to have a musical experience. They have to believe they came and saw a performance by musicians. And anything that starts to chip away at that, I'm very reticent
I
take
can
it
see
on,
that. Yeah.
I like, that's got to be gold. You got to keep those two things together.
Yeah, I can see that. But maybe doing something interesting for, half of one song.
Oh,
or something
totally.
like-
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm saying,
then come
as
back
long
home.
as, like, I think of it this way, visuals and music, as long as 1 + 1 is always equaling 2, we're
Or
golden.
more.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But if 1 + 1 starts to equal less than 1, we got a problem here,
Yeah. Yep. That's fair. And of course, you have the subjective calculation happening there because it's not objective, right? I mean, you're making the calculation for you on behalf of the audience, and like, thank you for doing that.
That's that's
the gig, right?
It's something that I've been preaching since the first mixing classes I've ever taught, which is listen like a fan, mix like a pro, right? Should always be listening like a fan. But your approach should always be professional,
of course,
at the audio end of it.
Of course, yeah, makes sense. It makes sense.
I was just flashing back on one of the first times I ever went out. It wasn't the first time, but it was one of the first times where I went out to hear an immersive system for a concert, and it was the moment where I said, "This is the way. This is the way." And it was, I'm trying to think of the artist now. I'll think of it here in a second. I'm just spacing his name. But it was 2 drummers in the band, right?
Oh.
2 busy drummers in the band. And if for anybody out there who has ever tried to mix live sound with 2 drummers, it's the hardest thing ever.
I've played as 2 drummers and had enough of a tough time mixing what I wanted in my ears, let alone, I can't even imagine. Yeah.
It's a nightmare, honestly. Sonically, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, because there's always a flam.
Impulses, there's always a flam,
correct.
et cetera.
Yeah, yep.
But on this situation, it was Bon Iver. Bon Iver.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, it was a fantastic show. But they took and pushed the drums out left and right. So the left drummer was on the left half of the immersion. The right drummer was on the right half. And I mean, it's going to sound like I'm exaggerating here. I could make out every grace note that was ever played on that drum kit and know which drummer was playing it.
Yep. That makes sense.
I just remember thinking, this is the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh. That is the way. That was I was never a huge fan of the Grateful Dead, but I was brought to see them a couple times, and the whole thing that sort of brought me out of it, and this is my own fault, this is not anybody else, but brought me out of anything was that there was just flams happening on the drum set. Like, that's part of their sound.
It's just part of the deal.
It's part of their sound. And once I had to just get over it and say, like, okay, this is what this band chooses to sound like, because it is what that band chooses to sound like.
I came to see Derek mix, Dead and Company here.
Yeah.
I've been in to see probably the majority of the shows that have been in the building since it started.
Got it.
I mean, I was here for U2 opening night. And
I remember you said that. Yeah.
And he does a fantastic job with that in there. I mean,
good.
I mean, that was as good as I've ever heard, the Dead sound. And I've heard the Dead sound great on occasions. No kidding. I mean, I've seen them tons of times throughout the year, but I really enjoyed it at Sphere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, I said this to somebody not long ago. I've probably repeated this a couple of times, is that, this whole idea, is this whole media thing necessary? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, we as an industry have been pushing toward this for 60 years. This all started the first time somebody dumped some oil on a overhead projector with some food coloring in it and put it up on the back wall of the Fillmore. We've been trying to do this kind of thing. So now fast forward, I mean, this venue is just tailor-made for the Dead and their graphics.
Oh, of course. Yes. I thought the same thing for Phish too. Yeah. But arguably even more so for the Dead, because they've always had that element to it, whereas Phish has always just been lights, and you get none of that.
Well, their mentality has been in that since the 60s.
That's correct. Yeah.
And just think about all the bands that have pushed through this, obviously Pink Floyd, obviously Rush. I mean, and they were all doing it with film, right? This wasn't video. They had film projectors out there. I know when I was out with Rush, we had 3 locked film projectors. I can remember walking backstage a couple of times, just film laying everywhere on the floor back there where a projector had spun off,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
For people to say we don't need to do this, it's like, well, tell the whole industry that for 60 years.
Go rewind.
We've been doing it forever. This is the culmination of this. And this is a little bit of a singularity. I mean, we aren't going to see anything above and beyond this for a long time now,
I would think so. I mean, and even if they build another one of these, or even if they build 5 more of these, that's probably the extent of it, certainly for the next decade, I would assume, until the industry demands that every venue be like this. And I don't know that would ever happen, mind you, but like otherwise it's going to be a specialty venue, and that's great. Yeah.
I've thought this a couple times, even before we got in there, I was like, okay, I know how this is going to go for Chesney, because he's a very visually driven guy in his shows.
Yeah.
He has a lot of video content and he's always very wrapped up in it, but it's like, okay, well, once we leave the sphere, what are you going to do at your stadium show now? That's going to feel, small and limiting now compared to this, but I'm not going to put it past him. I mean, he's a very, very creative mind. And I bet it actually enhances his shows. Like, he's going to think of things differently in terms of the visual content at the stadiums now.
I would imagine that's true of every band that comes through there, that place is an inflection point in a lot of ways. Yeah. Phish now starts songs with a click track. Phish starts songs with a click track now, and that all came from Sphere, whereas it previously was like it was all just whoever was starting the song, wherever their adrenaline was, that's where it was, and that was part of the show.
Yeah.
And now that's not part of the show anymore. It's really interesting.
If I had to think about where it's going to evolve to, and I think this from the video perspective, is that, because you have to keep in mind, technically, man, this is the most intense thing I've ever done. I mean, there's so many places where it could go wrong, but I think from the visual aspect of it, once they get it to the point where you can kind of put your own creative spin on it, almost like DJ kind of work,
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, we're going to count you in, and the video guy's going to do his thing, and the audio guy's going to do his thing, the band's going to play, and it plays right into something like Phish, where they can go off on a tangent and play another 6 minutes of something, where you as a video guy would say, okay, I've got all that footage waiting, and I'm just going to run it as I feel it,
Yes.
So then it becomes another creative element for it.
I think that's exactly what happened. Yeah. Yeah,
which is what it should be.
Night to night. That's what it. Well, for that band, that's what it should be.
Yeah, agree.
Right, but a band like Rush, although I know the lights were mixed live, it blew me away when I learned that. I was like, really, the lights were mixed live?
Oh man, Howard, he's on the whole game. Yeah, so.
I had no idea until late in their career that Howard was mixing lights live. But there was so much of that show, like you said, that was videos that were very much in sync with what was happening musically and all of that. And obviously, huge Rush fan. Also great, but for that environment. But every band, like, there are those things where, yes, just take the tech and use it as it suits your art.
Yeah, it becomes another creative input, right?
Yeah.
Another creative input to the show and can make another show unique.
Yes.
That was the thing I loved about the Phish thing, was that no 2 nights were ever the same. I mean, we're kind of doing that with Chesney, because no 2 set lists are the same.
Oh,
even so far up to the last. I mean, there's like a bed of songs that they're going to do, and we have those done. But it kind of take some turns. And I think the thing that Chesney's doing, which is really interesting, is we have guests.
I noticed
showing
that
up nearly every show, so that's a whole nother thing to deal with, so.
Yeah, that's and I love that he's bringing people in and letting them experience Sphere and like you said, it gives the audience a unique show, which is not only a nice thing, but also business wise. I mean, maybe you want to come see multiple shows of the same run.
To me, that's the genius of the Phish thing, and even the Dead thing. I mean, the Dead thing, and their set lists were changing radically night to night. So I can't even imagine how much content they had developed and prepped. Because I can tell you, man, prepping video content for this, and I'm not a video guy, so please don't send me hate letters. But man, I mean, we started working on video content for this 1.5 years ago.
I believe it. Yeah, I know Phish was working on it for a year. but they didn't have any other, like that was the full amount of notice they got and immediately started working.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a unique format. I mean, it's 18K video, for one, and then to have to stitch it together into that kind of the dome look.
Yeah.
I think I heard rumors, please, Sphere, if you're listening, don't quote me on this. I think this is what I heard though, that it's about 2 days per minute of video render.
And that's probably not a weak render farm either. So
no. So
yeah.
So I give a lot of kudos to those guys, man. Their back was to the wall trying to get this ready to go.
That's amazing.
By comparison, audio is like, what do you got to complain about? It's
what do you got? Yeah, it's real time, buddy. That's right. But
we got our world. We got our challenges.
I was just gonna say that's the world you have to live in. It is real time. So and it is what the whole show is about, or at least a good chunk of it. So yeah.
Well, it brings up an interesting point from our end. Using the word render kind of made me think of this. One of the challenges we have, which I'm still contending with a little bit, is like, on the stadium tours, I am always mixing off of the console, adding audience mics, creating essentially, live album quality audio and posting that for the band every night for review. Right.
Oh, well, how do you do that here?
Well, how do we do that here? There's no stereo bus, So, I haven't got it totally cracked yet. But I actually got to go back to work on this today to try to figure this out. My plan is I have a 5.1 audience mic head that I use right at the mix position. And what I ultimately want to do is be able to blend that with my objects that I'm sending to the PA and kind of mix that down to stereo and then post it, so that at least they have some sense of the audience, et cetera. And then I think in best of worlds, I would print a binaural copy of that.
Oh yeah.
So they could get some sense of what the actual is happening in the room.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't cracked that nut totally yet. But the Sphere Spatializer gives me some opportunity to do that.
I was going to say, if you could just pick a mix position and say, I want to render this down to that. I say this not being the one in charge of any of it. I get to sit here and in about 10 minutes, I get to say, all right, good luck with that. Bye. But
well, as I mentioned, if we're going to do it that way, one of the things you have to do is, which my buddy Paul Freeman over at Sphere that guy's been so helpful to me. He's given me so much insight because he's one of the mixers over there. He mixes some of the movie content over there.
Got it. Okay.
But you have to work in a 7th order ambisonic Pro Tools session. So just figure out the routing on that.
Even just saying that is a problem.
So, you're going to have 64 outputs into the oralizer from your Pro Tools system and then create a fold down from there. And then add audience mics to it. So, it gets...
wait a minute. Yeah, because the audience mics are, it turns out, also going to have signal from the PA in them.
And it's going to be out of time.
Oh, yes, it is. Well, no, it's perfectly in time from that location.
For that location, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
so, there are some challenges there,
In theory, if you pick the location in advance and know that that's where your audience mics are, then you just tune your
mix it's not
down.
Delaying a stereo mix now back to an audience mic.
Oh, yeah,
it's
that's
delaying
right.
64 objects as a group back. You could do it. I think that's my plan, is to do that.
Yeah.
Where there's not so much space between the PA audio and the audience mics, but all to be determined. Maybe we'll have that on the follow-up episode, Dave.
Yeah. Good luck with that, by the way.
But it's a great example of something that we just take as routine. In a stereo environment, mixing on tour, and here is very, very challenging to do unless you get the right tools in place and the right approach in place.
Yeah, you've given me my brain is it's digesting now. This is great. I love this. Yeah. I got to drive to band rehearsal later tonight, and I know I'm going to have 14 more questions on the way. Yeah, that's right. Wait, what did he mean? Wait, well, how is he going to? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What a blast, man. Thank you for taking the time to share all this with us. I know we didn't get into anything EAW yet or anything else. Is there any of that you want to talk about? You want to just do that? We'll do it in 3 or 4 months when you're.
I would just
reprocess.
I'll bait the hook a little bit with the listeners and say, keep your eyes on EAW.
Okay.
They're on the way back here, and I see the roadmap where we're going to go with it, and it's really exciting. Really
Okay,
excited.
great. Well, then when as that evolves, I definitely want to have you back to talk about not just what the products are, but why the products are. Because
We should,
I know
Dave, we should get back and talk about the adaptive products.
I had that on the list today. Obviously, I failed to carve out time for that, but the
'cause
adaptive stuff.
This is
I
a
saw
really
your-
interesting story for adaptive. I'm just telling you because I don't know how much time we got here, but I'll just give you this little primer on it. After taking on adaptive when it first came out actually the first time it was released as a touring product, like with the Anya systems, in 2012, 2013, whatever it was. I like once I got on it, I kind of got it. I was like, okay, I understand what the difference is between this and the other line arrays that are out there, but the industry didn't. The industry did not pick up on exactly what was happening there. And I don't think it was ready to actually understand it, and I can tell that just by the way the industry has reacted to it. Oh, it's this black magic voodoo and they're doing all this DSP stuff, which is patently untrue,
I know.
So, now fast forward, 10, 12 years later, and I'm out and presenting it and the market is just reacting completely different to it. There's this light bulb moment where everybody's kind of going, right. I see what you're saying now. Like, my punchline with it is we're all line arrays. Just some of us are way, way more line array than others.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
It's kind of an interesting story because I think this really kind of revolutionary thing has happened with the from EAW, and it's gone really unheralded and really kind of unrecognized. I mean, that product is probably, no exaggeration, 10, 15, maybe 20 years ahead of its time.
Interesting. Yeah.
And still going.
Yeah. Right. No, I remember seeing you demo the adaptive stuff at NAMM earlier this year. And it was like, okay, wait, what are they doing? Like, this is not like I thought it would be.
It's, at the end of the day, it's painfully genius in many ways. Everybody has this idea of this complexity that's in place, and it's just not there.
It's super simple.
It's super simple, and that's what separates it from all the people that are doing
I expected to show
and
up
all the other things, which is really heavy-handed with DSP, and this is not. It's just intelligent,
No, I remembered showing up. It was like 3 p.m. was the time slot of your presentation that I could make because you did them all day for like 2 days or something. And I'm like, oh, this is the wrong time. I'm like, I want to fall asleep. Like, I know
that's the general response.
There's going to be a lot of not during it, but as I'm going in, like, is this really the right time for me to sit down for 45 minutes and listen to somebody talk about math and how it affects sound? And that's something I'm interested in, but even still, like, lunch is eating against me. Like, what's going on here? And that wasn't the case at all. It was like, oh, wait. So yeah, we let's as this evolves over the next few months, let's get you back and we'll talk.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn
that.
there. Lots to learn about the technology that's out there. Yeah. That's doing the other thing for sure. It's eye opening.
It's cool stuff. Robert, thank you again so much. What a blast.
Dave, thanks, man. Yeah,
of course,
always a pleasure.
My friend. Yeah, man. Where can people follow you if you want people to follow you?
I post regularly updates from the show, etc., on my Instagram account, which is Robert Scovill.
Yep.
I'm on Facebook at Robert Scovill, and you're welcome to dive in there as well. That's probably the two main places.
Great.
I also have a weekly meeting, which you have been very gracious to attend many times.
Oh, I consider you very gracious to have a non-pro sound engineer attend.
Oh, no,
just little old Dave. So
there's no criteria for getting in other than showing up. So but it's called the Back Lounge, and you can sign up for that for the alerts for the invites on my website, which is robertscovill.com. I think there's on the landing page. I think there's a place to enter your email address and get the alerts. But we do that every Thursday at 4:00 in the afternoon, 4:30 in the afternoon, West Coast time. So
perfect.
Yeah, that's always a good time. Everybody comes in there.
Yeah, you moving it to Thursdays has made my attendance difficult because that's usually gig night for me.
Yeah,
so,
I had to. I mean, I have
you had to
a show every Friday now, so we had to move it Thursday. So
no, at all.
But yeah, that'd be great. I look forward to interacting with people. So.
Amazing. And you are, I will share this, folks. Robert is, as you can tell, a lifelong educator, it clearly is important to you to help people understand this stuff, and that's not just the case when you're here on Gig Gab. That is the case 100% of the time that I've encountered you.
I mean, I've always lived with this philosophy. If I can teach it effectively to somebody who doesn't know it, then I actually understand it. So
yes, that's the key.
It helps me understand it to
keep
be able to teach
teaching it until you understand it. That's been the key to my career. It's different subject matter, sort of, but no. If you've made it this far in this episode, then it's okay for me to share this. When Gig Gab kind of evolved 18 months ago, when Paul had to leave the show schedule wise, and I was on my own, it was like, okay, I have a secret mission to make sure everybody that's out there playing in bands understands how live sound works. And that's why I've had you on, and and other folks in the industry. And I try not to overdo it, even though these are the conversations I would love to have every week. But mixing it up and having that, it's super helpful.
You're doing such an important thing there.
I know.
Because I'll speak to it from the perspective of an engineer. It's so hard to go talk to band members and have to, condense it down to language that I feel like they can understand,
Yes.
Because some of these, audio is a weird thing, man. You can't see it,
No.
It's counterintuitive.
It is counterintuitive. I don't know why it took me this long to do this. I'm sure there's a million reasons, but with the primary band that I play with, one of the primary bands I play with, finally moved to a split snake recently, where we get to show up and mix our own ears, and whoever our front of house engineer is, even if it's a front of house engineer we hired and brought with us, whatever they want to do to gains, EQs, all of that, it doesn't affect us. Our ears are the same every night, and it's awesome. But as I was walking into a club just a couple weeks ago with a front of house engineer that I know, and I was like, "Hey, we're doing things a little bit different tonight." And there's always a negotiation, right? So I need to sell you on the concept of this. Some front of house engineers are like, "Awesome, I don't have to. I can mess with gains, and you don't yell at me. Great." But others, they haven't ever experienced it before, so they don't know. And this guy had, but he didn't quite understand why he had. And I said to him, I said, well, for us, the difference that it makes is gains. He's like, yeah, I get that. I said, and EQ. And he stopped and he said, wait, when I adjust, and this is using not mixers where there's a split and all of that in it, but, a standard kind of mixer that you're going to find in a theater or club, he said, wait, when I adjust EQ for front of house, that impacts your ears? He's like, I thought all that was pre-fader. And I'm like, it's pre-fader, but it's post everything else. Yeah. And it was hard for me not to say it that way. Right. But it was like, no. And he's like, I never thought about that. I'm like, this answers a lot of questions about what's been happening with the sound in my ears every other time we've played here.
Think?
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, oh, it opened his eyes. It was like, oh, great. Now, not only did I not offend him, I educated him, and he's on board with this concept. So this was great. Yeah, but
I'm always for getting on that split. It's like, hey, man, if your mix is bad at the end of the night, don't come talking to me.
That's on you.
Check the mirror, buddy.
Yeah, that's it. But what's great is we can sound check before front of house even shows up.
Yep.
We can sound check our ears anyway. Then we got to come back and do line checks for front of house. But every gig we have done since we started doing that, and I'm the drummer, so I got to bring drums and I got to bring the split snake and the ears mixer. It's extra crap. We have been able to shorten our load-in time by having this with us by 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Easy. Because we're not trying to I need more of that, less of this, the whole, no. It's great. Anyway, I could rant for a long time about this. And clearly, it's good stuff. So thank you.
It's a pain point for you, Dave. I see it.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been. That's for sure. Now I just need to train another band member to do all of that setup. And I'm working on it.
No. Now it's going to tumble downhill again.
I know. Every time I join a band, I tell myself, okay, Dave bang drum, Dave sing. No one needs to know that Dave knows anything about sound. And I say that to myself, and we get halfway through setup for the first gig together, and I'm like, get out of the way. Hang on. Let me fix this because it's not good. And I want it, we have a shared goal of it sounding good. And they're like, wait, how did you know about this stuff? No. Fugue state. Didn't know what happened. Anyway. All right, we got to get out of here because thank you, folks, for your time. I really
thank you,
appreciate
everybody.
this.
I hope this all kind of made sense to you. It's starting to make sense to me. Starting, I should say.
Well, you can come listen back, Robert, just like everybody else, and we can listen a few times, and then we'll get there. There is one. I don't know if you remember this from the last time, but there are 3 words that we like to say to our audience, and it would be my pleasure if you would take the honor.
Oh my gosh, what are the words? I don't know the words. What are the words?
They're at the bottom of the
Always
screen.
be performing.
That's it.
Boom. There it is. #boom.
What a blast. Thank you. What a blast.